G'day, this is another episode of Substandard Cooking with Thomas. Today we're going to be making sourdough. You might ask me, is this the correct way to do it?
No.
Is this the best way to do it?
Also no.
Will this lead to the best loaf I can make?
Rob's not.
Will this work the first time?
Maybe. No, but you won't waste much time.
So now that we've meted expectations, let's get going, eh? Alright, so first thing we're going to need is a recipe. You need about 475 grams of white bread flour, 120 grams of wholemeal, 414 grams of water, and 118 grams of
Sourdough starter.
12 grams of light oil, 11 grams of salt. Right, so you could use cups and whatnot, but really it's a whole huge faff. The easiest thing to do is just to get some scales and just measure it out by weight. Alright, here's the flours. We got Wallaby baker's flour. It really doesn't matter. Whatever sort of bread flour you can find, but really, it's the gluten. Get like thick, gluteny goodness in it. That was 175 grams of bread flour. Now 120 grams of wholemeal. So just sort of. Oh, getting close, getting close, getting close, getting close. Whoop, too far. Ah, that's alright. Cool. Yeah, and like, really, you know, make sure you peg these guys, because the last thing you want is weevils. But like, heavy duty peg for this. Ineffectual. So that's our flours. Our last dry ingredient is our salt. And a lot of recipes are like, oh, you know, let it hydrate and then get your salt in afterwards and then laboriously put it in. Just bugger it, man. Just throw it in now. Yeast doesn't care, nothing cares, and you can actually get it all the way through. And then this way you don't like forget it. This is like, it's salt. You don't forget it, and I tell you what, boy, it makes a difference. I forgot salt once and it tasted like shit. Now this is all in, maybe give it a little swizzle. This is like some fancy bread making doohickey, but like, just use a spoon. Or like, maybe something with like slots in it. You could probably use a whisk. Okay, so now we've done that, I'm actually gonna just make another whole one, because here's the trick. It basically takes no more effort to make two massive loaves than like one tiny loaf. So just make lots of, just make all the bread. Just make it and just give it to people, and then they're like, oh my god, you put in so much effort. So we got 415 grams of water. There we go, and you can see here I got it really wrong. So frankly, that's really one of the main things you can cock up. You don't want it too wet. You don't want it too not wet. So I'm just gonna put a little bit more in. Alright, well that was like, that's way more exact than I normally am, but you know, you get the idea. Oil, it's like light oil. I wouldn't use olive oil. The idea is to add like, you know, chewiness and nomminess, not like necessarily flavor. And it's like 12 grams, but you know, add a little bit extra diet is alright. And here's the thing, this is the starter. Fancy, fancy, fancy. Well, it's not really. Like, I'm pretty sure this came from leaving some wet flour out for a couple of days in my sister's kitchen. And I took it all the way down from Gladstone because it just doesn't care. You basically empty this fella out, because like any of this guff is enough for it to start a new colony. It's all alive. And that's the thing, like I say 120, right? Yeah, more or less 120 grams of this stuff. It doesn't matter. Yeah, the closer you get, the better, but like if you have less, just, you know, add a little bit more, I don't know, maybe half flour, half water, whatever. It'll be fine. Yeah, so you want to kind of splob it all up, get it really mixed in before you use it. I'm not going to be able to record this because it absolutely needs two hands, but maybe I'll have some calming B-roll if I can get the camera set up somewhere. Well, that was a tad too much, but it's totally fine. It doesn't matter. Just get yourself a trusty little fork and just sort of whoop, 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 whoop. Just sort of mix it all up. And this is why I put it in a separate thing, because it means that two things. One, it means you can mix it all up so you don't have a big splob of your starter just sitting in somewhere that makes it harder to mix in. The other thing is, like, I reckon if you're putting each ingredient into here, you're gonna get bits that are all like already sort of absorbed and bits that are bone dry, and it's gonna be harder to mix it all together. So the trick is, once you got it, just sort of get the whole thing and then just pour it in. Get all that guff out the bottom. It's all good. It's all good. And then just stir it all up. You really, like, you're not going to get it perfect, and you shouldn't try to get it perfect. Just sort of keep stirring in with whatever implement you have. It's going to look shaggy, and it's going to look like it's not going to work. You can see under here, we've got like a whole lot of unmixed flour. You just want to kind of like push it down and scrape it through, just so you kind of push the wet stuff into the dry stuff. Once again, we don't want it perfect, just enough. That's it, look. So you can see there's a big shaggy pile. You know, you can sort of squidge it around and there isn't anything just sitting around that doesn't want to stick. From now on, if you want to touch anything to do with this dough, just wet your hands, whatever you're dealing with. And what we're going to do is we're going to just scrape it all down into a bit of a ball, and yeah. And then, oh, this is really hard to do with one hand. I had to use two hands, but you know, you're just sort of scooping around and splopping it up. Scooping around, splopping it up. Scooping around, splopping it up. Scooping around, splopping it up. Just like that. Right, so that's it for like the next little while. You don't want to sit there and knead it or anything like that. The whole idea is we just wait for it to soak it up, and we fold it on itself. Wait, fold, wait, fold. So yeah, it takes a long time, but it's like not a lot of effort. So we're just going to go over to our fridge, throw on a timer for 30 minutes, just walk away. Right? Now remember, there may be better ways to learn to cook. So this is what it looks like after half an hour. Right. Wet your hands. Maybe wet this. Just give it a little whoop. Gets it off the bowl. Grab it, pull it up, slap it down. Turn it, grab it, pull it up, slap it down. Grab it, pull it up, slap it down. Grab it, pull it up, slap it down. You might be like, oh, this, yeah, it's stretchy, but oh, this is not looking so good. It's still chunky. My hands are messy. It's fine. Just wait. Wet your hands again. Splop, splop. Right in there. Pull it up, slap it down, pull it up, slap it down, pull it up, slap it down, pull it up, slap it down. That'll do. Leave it for another half an hour. Okie dokie, half an hour later. Wet your hands, get your thingy, scrape, 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 scrape. Lifty splop. Lifty swap, and after a while this is going to get a little bit harder, and that's good. That means that you're developing the gluten or something. So after 4 or 5 goes, you can see it's now much less sort of like shaggy. It's very stretchy. You're meant to do like the window pane test so you can hold it up to light and see through it. But I mean, if this was your window pane, boy, that's ugly. But you get the idea. Alright, next step. So you could let it try and rise at this point, then do the rest of the steps, but mate, it's so much easier. Just get one of these, get a little bit of spray oil, Let's get your scooper. Scoop it up. Oh, can I do it one-handed? There you go. Scoop it up. Throw it in. Throw them in the fridge. We'll leave them there for a day. We'll come back.
So your husband's made sourdough, and as usual, he's left the most important bit to you. Here's what we have left in the jar. Not a lot, just some scrapings really. We've got some wholemeal flour, doesn't matter what kind. Woolies brand is totally fine if they've got it. And just some spring water. This is probably not required, but hey, it works and it's real cheap, so make sure we're not introducing any extra chemicals if we don't have to. So we're just going to bung a few dessert spoons of this in there, tip in some water and stir it up. I'll show you at the stirring up stage. It's like, changed my mind. So you can see the flour's in there now. Can't see it all where it's up to on the jar because the jar's still super crazy. And then we're going to pour in about the same amount of water, trying to keep it roughly the same, but this is really done by eye. Okay, so we've got our water in. Now it's time to stir. And you do this really by feel. Stir it up, see what it looks like. Get it in, actually in shot. Stir it up, see what it looks like, see what it feels like. You don't want it to be too stiff, you want it to be easily stirrable. And you want to make sure you're scraping the bottom and getting all the old sourdough bits out. And well mixed in, because they're the bits that eat off the new flour and water to make your lovely sourdough starter. So this is feeling pretty good. Again, everything's done by eye, so we just give this a good stir up, make sure it's well combined, then we're going to scrape down the sides and then we'll top it off. So here's our newly fed starter. You can see the sides are all scraped down. Not much we can do about the lip, that's got too crusty. In there you can see it's all fairly well mixed in. Again, don't be too precious. And then you could put a lid on this, maybe keep it cracked, not super firm. But we just do this because who can find a lid? Bit of rubber band around there to hold it on, and then that goes in the fridge. Now, depending on how soon you want to make sourdough, you might need to refeed that again through the week, or that'll be good to go. That probably would only do 1 loaf of sourdough, so if you want to make 2 loaves, then you'd want to feed it again midweek so it can get a bit bigger.
So, it's been a day, and you can see, well, it's raised a little bit, and if you look underneath it, you can see all the bubbly boys. Right? That means it's about ready to go. So, first things first, we're going to pre-shape it. Now, for that, you'll notice at no point we've said flour stuff, and you can see this thing, no flour, and more importantly, dry. You're gonna make such a horrible mess if you go, well, I better clean off my board before doing this. No, leave the shit on it. Keep it dry. Doesn't matter. Because we actually want the bread to stick to it. So, we're going to turn it out. Let's come over here. Yep. And there we go. There's our bread. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now let's go get a scraper of some description. This one will do. You could do this with a lid or spatula. And what we're doing is we're trying to gently turn it into a ball. So underneath, we're going in and around, and on top, we're going around like that. And this is why we want it to be dry, because if it's not dry, it's just going to slip, and it's going to get wet, and your hands are going to get wet, and it's going to get sticky. And so in, turn, look at that. Like magic, it goes from being a big, ugly, slappy ball to a little happy ball. Yay! Now we're going to do that right from scratch once more. Just grab another chopping board, slap it down, we'll see how fast it is. Grab the other loaf. Get the lid out of the way. Hey! Now, keep these guys, because we're going to use them in a little while. Encourage it. To come out. And we're not knocking it down, we're just we're just sort of helping it form into a ball, which is going to make our next step easier. Now, this chopping board here doesn't get used as much. It's a little bit slippier, so this isn't quite working as well. You want something old, something grippy. That's why I said, leave a bit of grit on there, it'll help. Alright, look at that, beautiful. You can see little bubbles right here. That's all that juicy goodness. Alright, so the only timer that we've used for the entire time is a half an hour timer. Whew. Turn on another half an hour timer, just leave them, and we're going to come back and we're going to do the next step.
Starter update. Look at them bubbles. It's so happy.
It's been half an hour and you can see they've relaxed down a little bit. The next bit kind of goes a little bit faster. You need a bit of prep. And this is where things, diverge from what you're meant to do, as if they haven't already. You're meant to use a Benetton, like one of these guys. You absolutely can, but we're not covering that at the moment. We're going to do it the easy way. We're going to get the same containers we had before, but we're going to put baking paper in it. This is reusable baking paper. It's amazing. I have no idea where you get it, but it's great. I'm going to give it a quick spray down of granola oil. And you're going to want to do that to both. If you are making two, you shouldn't probably be making two for your first one, but you get the idea. Because what will happen if you don't get this ready and you're you got this stuff ready, you're going to be like because once this is done, you want to get it in really quickly. So we'll just do that. Now this won't end up with like as pretty a bread, but to a certain extent, who gives a damn? Now this is the first time that we're going to use flour, but like I've used the dregs of this flour for like months. You don't need much at all, so we just want to get a little bit of flour, a little bit like that, and you don't need much, but I prefer a little bit of coverage, so you just sort of get in it, because we want this thing to stick a little bit, just not like punch. Get your scraper, pizza scraper, whatever, put your hand on top, and then just scrape underneath, and then clip it down like this. This is when we want to go really quick. Let's get these two bits at the top here and fold them down like that. And then we get these two bits at the bottom like this and fold them over like that. So now we've made a bit of a bread burrito. Now we grab the end and we just fold it. Push, fold, push, fold. There's a very fancy stitching, I'll just put the sides out just because I can. Stitching thing that you can do to make this better and more circular and more pretty, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, this will work. Now that we've got this together, we just grab it and then we just put it in there. Now, you're not squeezing it, rotating it, stringing it out. You just have and it will work. So you can see here we took a little bit of that flour up. So you might want to just a tiny bit more, just a tiny bit more. The thing is, if you don't put enough, it can stick, and you can be like, oh God, what's going on? Ah! It's fine. Worst case scenario, it all goes to hell. You just scoop it all up, you throw it back into that, and you cook it, and it'll be fine. It'll be tasty. It just might not rise as much. So grab it, scoop it. You don't have to be too worried about it. Like, I can touch it with my hands. It's ever so slightly tacky, but then let's see if I can move it around so you can see underneath. Grab, bloop, and then grab, stretch over, and make a little burrito. And like, you should be able to even like, ooh yeah, so this is sticking a little bit. So I can't pick it up and rotate it around. But that's okay, because look, as I'm rolling it, it's rolling itself off, because as much as it may be sticky, the gluten is pretty dang strong. So it's going to want to stick to itself. So just grab it, and make sure I'm putting it in the right way around. Put it in like that. Now, with this, especially this reusable stuff, you're going to end up with like weird little seams and divots on the side, but it doesn't matter. in the end, it's still going to look pretty nice. But if you can use normal baking paper on this, the reason why we're going to use the baking paper is later for getting it into the cast iron thing. Because what you're meant to do is flip it upside down, get your hand in, like, and into this like screaming hot cast iron thing. But bugger that, especially if it's your first go. So we're going to use this. So if you're using baking paper, especially if it's your first go, maybe use a couple of goes of it, so that because it can wet the baking paper and you can sort of like lose the strength, so it's hard to pick it up and put it down. The easiest way to make sure it doesn't lose its strength is to just refrigerate it afterwards. It's only if you like leave it out to try and rise like naturally afterwards that it kind of sogs in the baking paper and goes all wrong. So you don't really have to put the lids back on, but I'm going to stack them. Throw them back in the fridge and forget about it for like, I don't know, a day. But at this stage, if you wanted to, frankly, you could throw them in the oven.
Give him an hour.
Give them an hour. But like, you know, it's like... and that's it. We'll be back probably tomorrow. This is what it looks like after a night. But not quite, because we lost power at midnight, so this is a little bit more a little bit warmer than what we would normally expect, a little bit more squidgy, so cutting it's going to be kind of annoying. Okay, cool, so let's do this again for the first time, ignoring this. Get a cast iron. Now remember, always wear your gloves. You're probably not used to lids being scalding hot. You will burn yourself if you're not careful. So you can see this is our dough. It has risen quite a bit. Now, you could use a nice little lame or whatever it is, razor blade to do this, but let's just use some scissors and just go snip, 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 snip. There we go. You can even go snip. Doesn't really matter. Technically, you're meant to come in at a 45-degree angle and be like, but, and that will make a difference, but just start with this, experiment with it, you'll work out what's best. Lift it by the corners, and this is why if you're using normal baking paper, you might have some issues here. But it should be fine as long as you keep everything cold, or just use multiple layers. Throw it into the container, and let's just add a tiny bit of water in here just to make sure that we've got extra steam. Steamy. Now, as you rush to put the lid back on, remember to put on the gloves. Alright, now the lid's on. Let's put it into an oven that's sitting at 220 degrees Celsius, and leave it for 25 minutes. Okay, so after 25-30 minutes, I've taken the lid off. Looks like that. A bit pale but tasty. And I've turned it down to 200 degrees, fan forced. And now we wait for 25 minutes. Now, this one's a little bit better. Waited for that 25 minutes, and now you can pick it up, you knock it to see if it's hollow. It's cooked, it's fine. Also, that requires you to be able to hold the bread, which will be scalding hot. Now, let's just pull it out. Now, a couple of important things. First things first. You want to pretty much immediately get it onto a wire rack. Make sure it's above the ground, above the surface, because you want all the air to be able to get to it and allow it to sort of like crisp up. If you just place it down on something or leave it in there, it's going to get soggy, it's going to get gross. And whatever you do, do not cut into it. Don't touch it. Don't even get a little side piece. I know hot bread is lovely. don't do it because you're going to let all the steam out. Got to leave it, wait for it to cool and settle. And then you can cut into it, because if you cut into it now, it'll just go. But yeah, that's it. Make sure everything's off. You've baked a loaf of bread.
Thank you for watching Substandard Cooking with our guest star, Katy.